Hello Year 9 and welcome to today's lesson. So today we'll carry on with 1,000 Splendid Suns and we're going to be focusing on question 4. So looking through your OneNotes, I thought maybe we could spend a bit longer planning question 4 and writing it because it's quite a complicated question and it's worth going over in a bit more detail. So for task 1, as usual, reread the extract, 1,000 Splendid Suns, or you can listen to Mrs. Dodwell's reading of it. If you haven't listened to Mrs. Dodwell's reading of it, I'd probably give it a go because she gives some good explanation of various words and context of the story. And when it gets around to it, I will whack a link here. Also, watch my video, which hopefully you are now, and when I upload it, the link will also be there. So pause that and get on with the do now. So for task 1, what you are going to be doing is recapping question 1, which is a retrieval question. Just to keep those retrieval skills going. So list 4 things that Leila describes, lines 53 to 60, and the extract you want is here. So list 4 things here. Remember to be specific about the 4 things you list. Only give yourself 5 minutes to do that because that's how long you'd have in the exam. So moving on to task 2, we're going to check our answers. So there's 4 things that Leila describes. It doesn't specify whether it's physical descriptions or emotional descriptions, so any of those would be fine. I'd say the first thing you'd want to mention is the carpenter in the shop sawing wood and sending chips flying. She's kind of making 1 point there, so I'd put that as 1 point. I know she's mentioning the sawing of the wood and the chips flying, which technically could be 2 points if you were really struggling, but this section has loads of points that you can mention, so I try and make that 1. Paraphrasing it is fine as well, so if you said she sees a carpenter sawing wood and sending wood flying everywhere, that would count. You don't have to do the direct quote. I wouldn't say whack a quote, just a quote in there. I'd introduce the quote. So almost like a combination of paraphrasing and using a quote as well, because that shows your ultimate understanding of it. So next thing you can mention is the cars. She sees cars racing past her or bolting past her. You could also say that she notices that the windows of the cars are coated in soot and grime. So there's really dirty car windows. I'd just be careful that she says their windows are covered in soot and grime. It is implied that the cars are dirty, but she's specifically mentioning the windows. So to be on the safe side, I'd recommend focusing on mentioning the windows being dirty. She watched the buses growling idly at the curb, with peacocks, lions, rising suns, and glittery saws painted on the sides. So you could say she noticed really decorated buses being idle on the curb. Any variation of the ones I've mentioned are fine, as long as they're specific enough. So keep them relatively close. So you can mention she's describing the warmth of the sun on her, so she could describe the warm sun. You could say she was feeling giddy, because she's also describing that. And it's having little sparks of euphoria. So this part is so easy to get 4 marks on this because it's so detailed. And then she got to notice a stray dog with yellow eyes and that was limping. So any of those points would be absolutely fine. Give yourself a score out of 4. So for task 3, what you can be doing is, this is a question 4. So what you do is read the question. After reading this extract from the novel, a student said, "I thought the woman would escape, and I shared their shock and fear when they were arrested." So that's the statement that you need to agree, disagree with, or to some extent agree. And in the question again, what extent do you agree? So things you could write about. You could write about your own impressions of the woman's chances of success. Evaluate how the writers created these impressions and support your opinions with reference to the text. I'd say definitely do all those. And remember, this has got your AO4, it's your critical analysis. So remember from last lesson, you could, I agree with this text, to somewhat extent I agree, and I disagree. I think if you're wanting to critically analysis and critically engage, to some extent agreeing is probably the best, because then you're looking at both sides of the coin. Also, if we zoom in on this question, after reading this extract of the novel, I thought this woman would escape. And then I shared their shock and fear when they were arrested. I almost see this as a two-part question, because you could have been shocked when the women were arrested, even though you thought they wouldn't escape. You could have thought they were escaped and you were shocked, or you could think that they were going to escape at the beginning of the extract, and by the end you really weren't shocked. So it's almost like a two-part question. You could deal with it in that way. So you could begin your writing by saying, I somewhat agree with this extract in that I thought the woman would escape, however I wasn't shocked when they were arrested. So identifies that you're attacking both parts of the question. So when you write your point, definitely think about it as a two-part question. Often questions for language paper 4 are kind of two-party in this sense, so it's really important to pause and read the question carefully, and read this statement carefully, because I think it's definitely a double-barreled statement here. So what we're going to do now is do quite an in-depth planning for and against. What I want you to do is write down as many things for the statement and as many things against. Find quotes. To help you with this, I've pulled up a little example that I have here. So you might want to pause the video and have a read of this and see the points that I've made. I'll read them to you now as well, but when you're planning your own you might want to pause this, have a little look more detail. So how I've laid it out is I have put it as a two-part, so I'd say a couple of P's tackling that I thought the women would escape, and then I've put the second part of the question here and shared their fear and shock when they were arrested. So for yes, I thought the woman would escape, you could say the young man seems trustworthy and positively described. He seems confident and content. She definitely does at the beginning of the text. However, maybe not so much by the end of the text. I think she starts getting that foreboding kicking in when she sees the young man talking to the train guard. A positive and calm mood is established. Definitely say so when they're sharing snacks and sitting in the sun. I'd say that happy mood is established there. Women are happy, and we share in that happiness. I think we do as the reader, because explaining in detail how happy they are. No. For the no side of thinking the women would escape, he agrees quickly to her request. Maybe poor and desperate. Yes, maybe he doesn't jump to that request. If you think about it, it is illegal for women to travel separately. He is doing them a massive favour and could get in trouble if he was caught actually helping them. So maybe he did do that, and that could foreshadowing, so that's your structural device you could mention there. Hints at underhand behaviour. Slipped the money on line 25. So again, that foreshadowing that something dodgy is happening, and that the money is a priority for this man. There's a sense the writer is lulling us into a false sense of security. I definitely agree. And remember, we went into the part, I shall show you quickly now. I always like to think about it when I'm analysing this text. There's this huge, beautiful, detailed description here of how brilliant everything's happening and how great she feels. And then the last line, and when a stray dog with yellow eyes limped by. I think that hints that actually behind all this beauty and happiness there is actually a dark underbelly waiting to happen. So you could use that quote if you wanted. Hints of unease of growling buses. I definitely think that the buses are portrayed as majestic and beautiful, but then also there is an extent of them being kind of foreboding and waiting to trap them. So that could be your for and against for the first part of the question, which is I thought the woman would escape. I've tried not to put too many quotes in there because I want you to pick them yourself. I shared their shock and fear when they were arrested. This may depend on your ideas for the statement. So again, you don't have to put all these points. It depends on how you view the question. I thought it just might help if you're getting stuck with where to start off. So for yes, I shared the shock. Short one sentence paragraph when the soldiers are introduced on line 72. So there definitely is structural. sense of shock there. One short sentence paragraphs, which are like one sentence or one word, or even just a couple words. If there's a change in paragraph length, it's definitely to show something, so you could analyse that. Again, mention with question 4, you could analyse language and structure and method. So again, with question 4, you can analyse anything that answers the question. The suddenness of Layla's realisation, in paragraph, the heart plummeted. Yeah, I think she's definitely shocked. If you weren't, you might not have been, and you might have had that sense of foreboding, or you might not have. That is up to you to decide. Treated roughly by the soldiers and Layla's fears shown, we have to, and a desperate question of why are you doing this. So there's rhetorical questions and pleading with the soldiers as well. So that shows her shock. If you weren't shocked, then the yes won't apply to you. No, for that, knew it was coming. The writer foreshadowed it, so it wasn't a shock. You can see the characters as separate from ourselves and emphasise them rather than shock and fear. So those are some points for no. You can pick a combination. That's fine. You still need to find quotes for it. Don't find quotes for all of these points. Pick which points speak to you, which ones you agree with, and then find quotes for those. So going back to the lesson. Yep, you want to put your point for and against and find evidence. Don't look for all of those. And if you have ones of your own that I haven't included in that grid, do bring those into it as well. Try and get a bit of explanation in here about what those points show. You've got about 20 minutes for that. And then what you're going to do for task 5 is you are going to write your point and quote. So here you're just jotting down as much as you can think of, and here you're going to lay out your P's focus. So I've put a couple grids for that. What I want you to do is write your point and then your evidence. So that could be P's 1, P's 2, P's 3, P's 4. Don't start explaining, just your point and your evidence. If you want to write your point out in full here, that's completely fine. It will help when you come to write the question. So you have 10 minutes. If these two are really combined, so this is your initial ideas and this is your refined, what you're going to actually use for your P's. Okay, I've turned it green, that's fine. So P's 1, P's 2, P's 3, P's 4, you might get a P's 5, that's fine as well. Point here, evidence here, no more than that. So you've got 30 minutes on task 4 and 5. So if you want to borrow time from each other's tasks, that's fine as well. So pause the video now, have a go at those. Right, for task 6, this represents your essay here, this little grid, and you're going to plan it. Don't write in loads of detail for your plan, literally bullet point it. You've only got 10 minutes, and you're not going to have much longer in the exam, so I think you have slightly less in the exam. So all you're doing is bullet point planning. So for your answer to this one, you're going to want a brief introduction. So here I've written answer the question, outline how you answer the question and give your opinion. So you want a couple of sentences for introduction. Then your P's 1, so you've got your point here and your evidence here. What you want to do is you can either copy and paste your point and evidence into this bit and then write a few headers for your explain. Again, keep it bullet pointy, and then do that for P's 1, P's 2, P's 3, P's 4. If you've got 5 P's, that's okay. Just add another section to it and then pop it in there. I hope that makes sense. It's just your quick planning. Right, moving on to section 7. You've got 40 minutes, which is longer than you will have in the exam, to write the answer to this question. Again, if we pop back up to the top. After reading this extract from the novel, a student said, "I thought that the woman would escape, and I share their shock and fear when they were arrested. To what extent do you agree?" So that's the question. You've found all your evidence here. You've weighed up your for and against with evidence. You've put your point and your evidence for your P's here, and then you've planned here. So use all of that to help you. Again, go to handouts. There's a P's breakdown, explanation, and sentence starters there for you. If you have any questions, please do email me. I will be going through OneNote in the lesson.